Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Some Dungeon Guy, bringing you all things role-playing. That's right, from map making to Dungeon Master tutorials, we're bringing it here for you. Today we're talking about an Inkarnate map making tutorial. It's all about decorating your map. That's right, we've showed you how to create your map. Now it's time to decorate it. Let's get into it. Alrighty folks, if you're just joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out our other videos in our Inkarnate tutorial series, okay? We started off with building some land. We then added some shading via the brush tool. And then we learned all about making stamps. And what we have is this map here you can see in our Inkarnate folder, okay? Now, today we're going to talk a little bit about decorating your maps, okay? Now, we're going to get back to this map that we've made, and you can certainly follow along, but we're going to use a blank map just to give you a couple ideas on some things that you can use to decorate. In our previous videos, we have a tutorial on shading, and we also, in our map building tutorial series, we've actually talked about shading just a little bit, and we're going to get back to that on the other map, okay? But in this, our blank map, I just kind of wanted to show you a couple ideas of some ways that you can decorate your map that are a little bit outside the box. Maybe you hadn't thought of it, maybe you had, okay? Certainly drop a comment below if you have ideas that I'm not thinking of or I'm not showing. And this is just going to be a few. There are certainly millions, okay? So some very common things that we do. We go into the stamp tool, right? Once you're in that stamp tool, millions of options, okay? Now, I've chosen Fantasy Regional, and it's going to give you a certain asset pack to go with. Now, typically, at the bottom of the asset packs are going to be more decorative items, okay? Now, in this pack, you can see it's actually mostly just functional land sort of pieces, all right? If I choose Inkarnate over on the left-hand side, now, that actually pulls up everything that we can have, all right? You can go to battle maps. You can open them up and it's going to give you some of these sort of ideas. One of the ones that's going to get you, if you go to Fantasy World, there's actually a decorations thing, okay? Now, these black and white images, certainly fine, you can use those. It's going to give you some compass roses, a few basic frames and things, which are great, and you know, we can certainly use some of those. But here's a couple basic ideas, okay? Let's talk about a basic compass rose, okay? Let's say we take a compass rose, right? It's huge, and we're gonna shrink it down a little bit. And really depending on your land mass, okay, that you have inside of your map, is really gonna depend on how big we're gonna make it. Now, a couple tricks I like to use, if I'm not putting anything behind it, like for example, if I'm gonna put like a banner over top of it, let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's say we're gonna put a title banner, okay, over top of it. Now, I like to keep my compass a little bit with the opacity lowered a bit, okay? So just by putting a banner on top of it, and let's say, I'm gonna call it something crazy. You can call it Gatorland, okay? Hit the select tool, and then all of a sudden we have, right, our own little icon. And just like that, let's group it, okay? Group it, and then we're moving it as a whole. So there's one way. Take a basic compass rose, we could put a banner over top of it, put some text over it, and then all of a sudden we have an icon that is brought to life a little bit to ourselves, okay? Going along that same sort of token, let's say we take a version of this compass rose, okay? Now I'm gonna keep that opacity pretty stark because I'm gonna put some decorations behind it. Now, sometimes you will remember where all these icons are located, sometimes you won't. We're gonna go and look for tentacle, okay? Looking for tentacles is going to give us some options, and you can see here this is under the water section, this is under the water section, but this is under the dungeon section. All right, you can use any of these, you can use anything you want, right? It's your map, do what you like. Today I'm going to use this dungeon one, all right? And you're like, well, what are you going to do? Well, you know, tentacles come in many forms. So let's take our tentacle, and just like this, we are going to, okay, suddenly we have it behind here, all right? And we're going to just lower it so it's in the background. And just like that, we now have tentacles wrapping around our compass rose, right? Now, we can rotate that a little bit if we kind of want to give it a certain direction. If we want to make it come out the other side, just like so, and then it extends it to make it look like one large tentacle. And look at that. We now have sort of a Kraken-styled tentacle wrapped over our compass rose, okay? And again, like some of the others, we can go in and let's put a banner over top of it. Okay, just like that. We're gonna choose Fantasy World because I know where those are. And we're gonna choose decorations, okay? So some of these decorations are gonna be pretty straightforward. So let's do a slightly different one, okay? And just like that, we're gonna make it a little bit bigger. It's gonna hide a little bit of the edges of that. Oops, and then we're gonna raise it up to the top layer. And again, stick your text in the middle of it. Maybe we're gonna change that text today. We're gonna change that to black, okay? Just so it stands out, or maybe a red. Let's do red, okay? Now, just like that, highlight the whole thing, group it, and now when you move it, you can move it as one piece, okay? So just like that, we have two different versions of the same sort of legend icons, right? Okay, so what if we want a frame, but we're not really sure what frame we want to use. Now, there are hundreds of different ways, right? So if you want to use, like, let's take one of these legends. If we use another version of the same stamp here, okay, we're going to shrink it back down. In fact, if you hit the V button, click that stamp, hit the stamp, it will automatically bring you to the same size stamp. Now, we're going to make it a little bit bigger and stamp it down, drop it a layer, okay? So, not the best effect ever, but again, it gives you a little bit of depth. We can go into transform. We can make that a little bit wider or more narrow. And just like that, right, you can see how these little points sort of touch the edges. Okay, and now we have a multi-layered frame, and we can put whatever we want. Okay, we'll raise that up just to make it look a little bigger, all right? Okay, and just like that, we've managed to layer up a frame, okay? The next thing we're gonna look at, are some actual frames to the map. Now, we have some basic frames, okay? Let's say we choose one of these, and we've got purple power. Now, a couple of ways you can do this. If you choose to line it up exactly with the edge of the map, that is great, okay? Another method you can use is to rotate that around with the hotkeys. You can actually just tuck it just off, okay? So if you tuck it just off, you get the effect of having a border, but you don't necessarily have to have the whole border. It sort of maximizes the amount of space you have inside of your map. And just like that, all right, just a little bit of border, and try to get it as close as possible to the other one. Okay, and just like that, you can see two completely different effects of how we use those borders, okay? And on these, let's say you want to change that up a little bit. We've talked about filters before in some of the other videos. If we want to go ahead and change that, maybe we want to make it a gray color, we can certainly change the color of the emblem just by going to the filters, choosing hue, saturation, brightness, and so forth, right? We got something more like a platinum, maybe we want to make it dark and a little bit dreary like some sort of stone, okay? Up the contrast. So again, this is going to make those stock frames and borders look like they're yours, okay? It's going to change it up a little bit. And if you do this beforehand, if you do this before you make the other ones, all right, so let's take up my contrast. Look how much more metallic that makes, okay? So then we're going to duplicate it and then rotate it. And as you can see, you can then move it and it keeps it that same sort of color pattern, okay? So, and, all right, we're gonna delete that one. Let's say this is the one we wanted to go with, okay? Again, we're gonna get it as close as possible. And you can fine tune it if you wanna move the transform tools and things like that, but we're gonna get it pretty close, okay? Now, some people like to do corners, some people like to do full borders, so we're gonna choose a full border, okay? Choosing the same silver frame, okay? And as you click through, it's gonna give you several different borders. Now, don't fall into the trap that you have to have the border touching the other pieces, okay? Like, I'm gonna put that down, I'm gonna make it bigger. Now, it doesn't have to be on the map all the way, right? It can, it doesn't have to. If you make it wide as you want it to be, or you can combine multiples together in case you want that texture to sort of flow a certain way. But just like that, okay? Boom, look, it almost matches. Now, again, we can do a little bit of that brightness change, right? And up that contrast, and now we're gonna have a border that, matches a little closer. Again, we're gonna duplicate it, rotate it a little bit, tuck it in behind the last layer, just like so. All right, and you can see how now we have a nice border, okay, that matches our frame down near the bottom, okay? So just like that, we've got a pretty decent border. And let's say we want to copy that border to the same. We're going to take it, we're going to group it, then we're going to right click and duplicate it. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're gonna rotate it 12 times, and that's gonna put us right here, 180 degrees, ready to roll. Bada bang, bada boom. Okay. You can then take one of the individual pieces. We're gonna ungroup it. Take one of these pieces and make it your side border, just like so. And I'm gonna change it to the background layer. Like I'm gonna drop the layer down to 0, just to make sure it doesn't overlap with any of my other pieces. I'm gonna right click it, duplicate it. I'm gonna drag it over and do the same thing. Okay, just like so. And just like that, we now have a 4-walled border. It's kind of got our own unique flair on it. We've made it a little more metallic. We've changed it to blue, and you can make it, you can certainly play with the options and make it match a little bit better. But see, just like that, different ways to make your map a little bit uniquely yours. Now, one of the other things you can do is, so you can go in and maybe make a new background for your frame pieces, like maybe a piece of wood, or you know, even a tree, or let's take some of this sewer slime, right? Okay. Again, we're gonna shrink that down pretty far, but instead of one of these borders, right, we could have some sewer slime sort of sticking behind it, just like that. All right. Duplicate it, drag it over, flip it so it matches. All right. Look at that. Now, how great is that? You know, don't hesitate to pick something and layer up your icons, okay? Layer up your stamps. It can give you a whole new effect. And much in the same way, we're gonna duplicate, and then again, maybe it's gonna match the theme you have. Maybe you have a plague going on in your city. These sort of look like vines, and again, if it matches the theme of your map, it's gonna be easier for you and your players to sort of figure out what you want, okay? So just like that, hopefully that gives you guys some ideas about some ways to decorate your map, some ways to name your map, and things like that, okay? Now, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna exit that out. I'm gonna go to my other map. Let's go to this edit map. I'm gonna show you some of this in practice, okay? What we're gonna do is we're gonna load up this tutorial map, which we've already spent some tutorial videos on, right? Map looks fine, it's playable, it's got some locations, some points of interest. Now, what we're gonna do is take that up to the next level. As we saw previously in the video, we can make some stamps, and we're gonna add some borders and things. But my first step, typically when decorating a map, is I'm gonna go back to my old standard, the brush tool, okay? I'm gonna choose a darker color for my green, make sure I'm on the foreground. I'm gonna choose the edge pattern on fairly not rough, okay? But I'm gonna lower this opacity way down, okay? So what that's gonna do, I'm gonna shrink my brush down, and that is going to let us brush over and just kind of haphazardly brush it over, okay? Every time you click, it's gonna darken up wherever you click, go over it, okay? So you can see how it suddenly makes patterns in the ground, all right? And just like that, we're just gonna draw over a few places, like so. And again, you can make that opacity lighter, darker, whichever one you want. But every time you go over it, it darkens up a little, okay? Now, once I do that, once I've got some of that shading going on, okay? And I have an entire video on shading, so feel free to check that out up in the link above. Now, but it's gonna show you a little more detail on how to shade and how a shading can affect your maps. Now, I'm gonna drop that opacity a little bit more. I'm gonna go over it with a lighter color, and what that's gonna do is sort of fade it a little bit so that the edges aren't quite so stark. Now, this is definitely an optional step. You can make it in certain sections, you know, but it gives you, see the texture that's forming into that? And just like that, we're gonna be textured up, and it adds a little bit of depth inside of your map, okay? Now that we've done that, we're gonna do water as well, okay? Opacity set super low, and we've done a little bit in the other map tutorials, but again, just make sure it's on that background level. We're gonna go over it just a smidgen. And what that's gonna do is the darker sections are gonna be deeper ocean water, and the lighter sections, of course, are gonna be the lighter, shallow ocean waters, okay? And something through here. And what that's gonna do is, like when you're playing, you know, it's gonna allow you to have sections where maybe people are driving ships through or sailing ships through, and they get to these, they get to the shallow parts, and it makes it a little tougher, okay? It's gonna give you a little bit of a challenge here and there, but notice it makes the colors of your map actually pop, right? And as we promised, we're gonna go back through real quick, and we're going to decorate our map with some frames, okay? We're gonna use the same sort of frames we used in the other one, because I kinda like those. I'm not sure I've used those before, so definitely new on my end, okay? So we're gonna choose this bad boy right here. We're gonna shrink it down, shrink it way down. Okay, and like I said, we don't have a whole lot of excess space So we have a lot of land mass covering our map. But we are gonna change the filters on it just a little bit. We're gonna up that contrast. It's gonna make it pop like metal. We're gonna change the hue because I don't really want purple or pink. I'm gonna change it to blue. We're gonna down that saturation just a little bit. Okay, and up that brightness. So it's gonna give it that sort of metallic sort of look. All right, we're gonna duplicate it, drag it over, just like that. Again, sometimes I like my borders to be a little bit off the map so you don't see the entire thing. It sort of makes a little bit more of a look. It's a little more subtle, so it's not quite such a big prominent feature. But just like this, in 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to copy them over, duplicate it, and now we're going to have all 4 corners framed in on our map right now. So we talked about the next step is we're going to go in and use one of our recently used ones. Okay. Oops. We're going to go to here. All right. Now the big key is knowing that we need to change some colors around. Okay. And again, you can do it this way. You can stamp it. You can increase the size a tremendous amount to make it bridge that entire gap left to right. Okay, which is what I'm going to do this time. But I'm going to scroll it up to the top. So just like that. Okay. All right. And edge it up a little bit. And that's actually as big as we get. So we're going to edge it up a little bit. We're going to go back to filters and up that contrast. Down that saturation a little bit, just to kind of get it to match a little bit better than it does right now. And we're going to duplicate it, flip it. Just like that. Drag it all the way to the bottom. Make the heights match. Going to duplicate it one more time. We got 2 more times to go. We'll make sure we drop it to the lowest level of 0 for now, which you can go lower than that, I guess, but that's all as far down as we need it to be today. All right, and then I'm going to stamp it one more time. And just like this. Sort of make it match as best you can. And bada bing, bada bing. Choose the select tool, select the empty space, and now you can see we now have a border around our map. And as we discussed, we're going to use a compass rose. Clearly, we're going to shrink that a little bit. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller to fit in the one space that we have available. Put it right here. Take me some tentacle action. All right. Again, we're going to slap a tentacle part there. And then we're going to take this piece of tentacle. We're going to rotate it a little bit. And again, it's going to make it look like it is going around that entire thing. Okay. Just like that. Sort of matches the corner edge. We're going to take it, we're going to add a bar of text bar, like a banner. Make sure we bring that forward to make sure it matches or covers up everything. Let's change that font color. We're going to put some text stamp down. And we're going to change it to orange. Okay. Put that text stamp down and we're going to write something on it. We're going to write Gatorland. And I'm only putting Gatorland because it just happens to sort of look like an alligator once we got done. Oops. We're going to take it and use our select tool, and just like that, we now have a little bit of decoration. Some other things you can do, sometimes we'll do it, sometimes we won't. I'll put like a sea monster. You might go and take, in your asset packs, you might find some abandoned ships and things like that, okay? You might just find boats and ships in general. Let's see what we got here, ship. So, you know, doesn't hurt anything. You can take a boat, slap a boat up in the far corner so you have something to like fill a little bit of space with if you want to. No pressure. If I go to all of them and maybe we choose some clouds, okay? And I like to get the really wispy clouds like these right here. We're gonna do random stamp. Let's see. Yeah. And we're going to randomize the angle and random flip, okay? So what this is gonna do, we're gonna up it a little bit. I'm gonna lower the opacity a smidge, probably about halfway. So, okay, so we can sort of draw some clouds over our mountains. All right, maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe it's not. Okay, just like that. It takes up a little bit of that space, and just like that, we've gotten ourselves a little bit more decoration. You know, maybe it's too much. Maybe keep it out of the middle. Keep it out of some of the deeper waters. But just like that. All right, folks. Hopefully you've learned a little bit of something, right? You've talked about how to shade a little bit. Kind of a quick shade, but it does add a little bit of depth of color to combine the assets. So you don't have to do what's straight out of the box. And just to maneuver and transform some of these assets to sort of give them a custom color and look that you like. Hopefully you like this video. If you have any questions about any of the steps, building landmass is in one of our videos. We have a brush tool video, a stamp tool video. Hopefully look through our playlist, the Inkarnate playlist, and you'll find everything that you possibly need. If you liked what you saw today, go ahead and smash on that like button for me. Subscribe if you want to see more Inkarnate and other Dungeons & Dragons TTRPG content. And as always, please leave some comments below so I have an idea of what videos to make in the future. Okay? Awesome. Well, as always, have a good day.